Welcome back to the FloTrack Podcast. FloTrackPodcast@gmail.com is our email address. You can find the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and on our website, FloTrack.org/FloTrack Podcast. I'm Kevin. He's Gordon. And the NCAA cross-country season is officially over, Gordon, for 2020.
It is, and so is October. What were you for Halloween?
Both things are over.
What were you for Halloween on Saturday?
I was nothing. My son was Black Panther and my daughter was Wonder Woman, and I accompanied them. And I feel like when you're a parent and you have kids, you don't have to then dress up. It excuses you because no one's going to pay attention to your costume anyway because everybody wants to look at what the kids are wearing.
Did your wife dress up?
She wore one of those shirts that had like skeleton bones on it. So I don't think that counts. Does that count when you wear a t-shirt that's your costume? I don't think so.
Oh, well, because I don't have kids and I'm not married, I still act like a kid and get dressed up for said Halloween. Sure. I went as a nasal swab for Halloween. So
you're pretty famous for your Halloween costumes because you did the lime scooter was that 2 years ago, and you won the contest with our
I did
with our website
lime scooter. Nasal swab though was a hit at the bars. The people thought it was funny. People would be like, "Hey man," they asked me like to give them a test, and I would take my head and ram it up their nose. It was a good time. Social distancing, of course. Check out my Twitter or Instagram if you want to see what I look like. I painted my entire face white. I never done that before. I looked like a mime. It was a good time.
What was JoJo?
So JoJo, we just watched The Sopranos. So she wanted to be Adriana from The Sopranos, but then she also wanted to be dead because Adriana, spoiler alert, gets killed. So she was dead Adriana.
I haven't seen it.
So she was a zombie Adriana.
But so she gave out spoilers.
Yeah, but people couldn't really tell that she was Adriana because it's not like a signifying characteristic of that actress. So she ended up being just because I was a COVID test and we're a couple, she was a dead pop star from COVID.
All right, let's move on. Let's talk about NCAA cross country.
It was a great Halloween. Let me just say, it was a great Halloween. Check out my Twitter if you want to see what I look like. It was great.
Yeah, you can do that. You can DM Gordon if you want more info on this. So we had those 3 conference championships that we recapped on Friday. So we're not going to go too in depth on those 3. We're going to look more holistically at the entire season now that it's on pause until January or February. So this is sort of, I guess the season's over for 2020, but it's almost like halftime. And we're going to do some winners and losers so far of what we've seen with NCAA cross. Of course, this is going to be weighted heavily towards Big 12, SEC, ACC, and then those teams that competed in Stillwater. But Gordon, do you want to alternate going winners and losers?
Yeah, I'll start with the loser.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Losers are the service academies, the Southern Conference, and the MAC Conference because they still have more races later on this fall, but you are overlooking it that we're crowning winners and losers before they even finish their seasons. So the fact that Southern Conference and MAC and America's race of service academies aren't getting as much love because we want to call a lid on the cross-country season, I think we're going to point that out. So
okay,
yeah,
you know what I meant.
I know. I'm being facetious.
Okay, so do you really want to start with a winner or loser?
Yeah, I really will start with the winner or loser. Winner, I would say, is Oklahoma State men. They came into the season as I don't know. I remember when I ranked them like, oh, they're on their home course. They'll make the meet and they get 25th. This was like, there's too many unknowns. I knew Isai was good, but he was coming off an injury. I knew they had Ryan Smeaton, but he's a steepler, hasn't really shown to be like a legitimate like top 40 type guy. And then they had a bunch of young guys who haven't done anything. And then they go out and they win the Cowboy Jamboree. Then they get second to NAU, technically third behind BYU at their home meet. And then they go out and beat Iowa State again at the conference championship, putting together a resume that's like, hey, the team's legit. They do have a couple weaknesses. They don't have really much depth. There's a big drop off after 5 for them. Another weakness would be they're young, but their strength is like they're pretty damn good. And like if all 5 runners are having good days, this team is a top 5 team in my opinion. Because they can put together. They're going to be on their home course in March, and I think they are the one team that really embraced this season and come out of it as like a new look contender going into March. And this team, I don't think they're going to win in March, but because of COVID, they get to return everyone for 2021. And then they'll get to basically only lose one guy from this roster for the 2022 season. And in 2022, the meet is also in Oklahoma. So I'm looking at the 2022 cross country championships. We could have a home team potentially win the whole damn thing.
Okay, good. I was waiting for your 2022 prediction, and it's weird that it doesn't involve Middle Tennessee State. Usually, when you're forecasting 4 years out, it ends in a Middle Tennessee State title. I'll stay on the men's side, and I'll stay with the team picture. Arkansas, I thought, was a big winner here. Now, they had high expectations coming into the shortened season because your rankings put a lot of pressure on people. We know that. And you said Arkansas could potentially contend with BYU and NAU because they have that group of transfers coming in. I thought they didn't do anything spectacular, but I think that they lived up to what you said they'd be capable of with Amon Kemboy, with Chebison, et cetera, et cetera. And now I think you're looking at a situation where Arkansas's worst case scenario, their floor is 4th in March, depending on who they run. And that's a good spot to be in because the pressure is going to be on the defending champion, BYU. The pressure is going to be perhaps on NAU to get some payback. Arkansas is still a little bit under the radar, even though you in your rankings have anointed them as a potential upset candidate and can win the entire thing. But I thought they did good enough and they showed, okay, everybody's here, everybody's healthy, they're able to compete. You could see that turning into a team that's very dangerous in March.
Yeah, and though Arkansas does have I'm not sure what the phrase is it bugaboo? I may have made that up. With the fact that Arkansas is hosting NCAA indoors. I think they're hosting SECs as well. Administration is going to be like, hey, you got to do well in indoor. Like, we're hosting it. You can't just sandbag indoor. And if these guys are asked to go to the well for their SEC championship, for NCAAs, their ability to also succeed 2 days later, 2 weeks later, whatever, at the NCAA cross-country championships might be hindered. So that could be a disadvantage, but we don't know how they'll approach it. But, of all teams, Arkansas is the one where there's a big-time track program element to their responsibility. Like, you don't have the Florida cross-country team out there. You don't have the Texas A&M cross-country team out there or Houston or all these other teams, Texas Tech, LSU, all these teams that we think are going to try to win indoor titles. But Arkansas is the one where, like, hey, we got to try to do both. And it's going to be a challenge for Chris Bucknam.
They have depth, though. You brought it up looking through the results yesterday. Some of the people that you thought could be one of their top 3 guys actually was 6th at SECs. So they have some options there. They have some things that they can play with. I don't know how they're exactly going to approach it. I think they should go for it in cross. Well, they should do both, depending on how many they get through to the top 16 there indoors. But Arkansas to me was a big winner. Are you going to do losers? I just feel like everybody's lost this year, and I'm trying to think of some. I have a lot more winners in my head. I mean, if you want to do a loser, you can do that as well too. I'm just thinking in my head of who I want to pick next, and it's just a lot of positivity coming out of my brain today.
I have a loser.
Okay, go ahead.
Thomas Ratcliffe goes to North Carolina. He first race of the season finishes like 8th, and then at ACCs and DNFs. I mean, Ratcliffe is like arguably one of the best talents. I feel like when healthy, you could argue that
Yeah.
Thomas Ratcliffe is the best distance runner in the NCAA right now when healthy.
Mhm.
I mean, he got third in that 5K behind behind Fisher and McDonald,
Yeah.
and that was 2 years ago. Uh, but he just hasn't been able to put together a good cross country season. Basically, the last time we saw him on fire was cross last year when he was like regular season cross
Mhm.
when he was going head to head with Edwin Kurgat, who Kurgat ended up being the NCAA champion. So he was neck and neck with the future NCAA champion, and now he's just not able to put together good races. Um, Change of scenery didn't help. I mean, I'm sure the academic workload at North Carolina is a lot easier than Stanford, but just hasn't been able to put something together. There might be something more to it. Again, it's okay to kind of suck right now because there's nothing to be good for, right? Because
Mhm.
it's a fake season, right? So
Mhm.
in the end, it's not that big of a deal, and I'm sure they're probably thinking like, hey, bigger things, let's get healthy for the trials, stuff like that. But uh, yeah, I guess that was one loser. I was most excited to see, hey, what's Ratcliffe going to do in a new uniform out
Mhm.
there on the East Coast, and we didn't get to see anything special.
I think I just threw North Carolina's academics under the bus there, saying it would be easy for him. He's probably in a pretty tough master's program. North Carolina is hard school to get into. Um, yeah, he was so good in that 5K outdoors, and then the beginning of cross country in 2019. He had that wave, was riding that momentum, and then the end of the season petered out, and then now it's back to where it was. If he can get healthy, I bet he's. I mean, probably happy that the season is over at this point and kind of regroup, reassess, and try to salvage some of what he had last year. Because you're right, there's very few people as talented as he is. I'll do another winner for you. I'll go to the women's side of things here. Um, Going back to that Stillwater meet, Whitney Orton winner. She got the victory, looked really good doing it. Also in this offseason, she set the world record for the basketball mile. So things are going to schedule for Whitney Orton. I think, you start the year, what do you want to accomplish? Do you want to win a DMR? Nah, anybody can do that. What you want to do is you want to get a basketball mile world record and you want to get a win in a very strange race in Stillwater. She did that. I think she still is the top contender for top contender to Kaladi on the women's side of things. And I don't think is there who's third? Like I guess I could pull up your rankings here, but if it feels like there's like a gap between those two. Do you feel the same
Yeah,
way?
yeah, there hasn't been another person who's really solidified the marquee matchup up there besides those two.
So you have
Uh,
Donahue third, who wasn't racing, Bethany Hawes fourth, Jessica Lawson fifth. So 3, 4, and 5 haven't run this year, but they just don't have the like Kaladi and Orton have a little more cachet to what they've done and just the times that they put out. And in Kaladi's case, the national championships that she's won. So I feel like those two are a little bit separate from everybody else. Kaladi's ahead of Orton, but then there's a gap between 2 and 3.
you mentioned how she broke the world record in the basketball dribbling mile,
Yeah, yeah.
and a lot of people have been doing this, right? You have the beer mile, you have the blue jean mile, they have the running backwards mile. I was thinking about it this past weekend. Do you think I could break the world record in the no warm up mile? Like, how many people have attempted to run a mile without warming up, let alone try to run a fast mile without warming up?
Let me
So,
counter that with another question. How long do you think it takes Eliud Kipchoge to warm up?
well, I'm just
What's
saying,
the first mile of
has
his long
anyone?
run?
Yeah, I guess his first mile is probably a world record of his warm up.
Yeah,
But I'm like talking
yeah.
about like someone who's like, all right, we're going to the track, we're not going to stretch, we're not going to jog, we're just going to put on spikes, step
Mm-hmm.
to the line, and run as fast as possible. Like no one has ever done that because you need to warm up, you need to jog around, and you stretch it out a bit. And like maybe this
Yeah.
is my avenue because I hate warming up. Try to break the no warm up world record. It's definitely
Were you a
the record is empty. No one
were,
has ever recorded it. Like I could be the first. Set the
do you feel like
base.
you're uniquely qualified for this? Are you an anti warm up person?
Yeah, I'm more. Yeah,
Okay.
well, I'm anti long warm up. I just have this mental
Yeah.
thing where I tell myself, "Oh, warming up gets me tired, and then I'm like, I don't want to go more. It's just like a weird thing. Like the more I warm up, the less energy I have for the actual race. That's what I told myself in college.
Mhm.
I mean, it's not true, right? Because you're clearly my body can handle it, but it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
it was like a mental thing. Like, oh no, I shouldn't be moving because I need to store all the energy and let it all out at once when the race starts. But anyway,
See, I'm the
yeah,
opposite. I'm the opposite. So I think I really needed long warm ups, and I was really paranoid about not being warmed up enough. So I think you and I, if we put our two philosophies together, could have been a normal, level headed runner and not
there you go.
ridiculous on one extreme or the other. Who
Yeah.
else you got?
Uh, should I keep on coming up with some losers?
I mean, you
I,
can do
I mean,
whatever you want. I don't want to influence you one way or the other.
I was gonna say loser. I mean, maybe not loser, but like uh not as
Incomplete.
much
Incomplete.
loser
You,
to the hype. Loser to the hype.
okay.
I would say the NC State women. They did go out and win everything they did, right? They won ACCs convincingly. They showed that it had interchangeable parts with Steelman and Claremont. Uh, Kelsey Camille wasn't really as up there with the rest of them, but still, whatever, they were winning everything they did. But the NC State that we were thinking about in our minds and our dreams all summer long wasn't what we got, during this COVID season. Obviously, no Marley Starlipper and no Caitlin Tui. So they're 2-star freshmen. They decided to, guess, not compete. Red shirt / not red shirt, whatever. We might see them probably in March, probably due to an
Mhm.
injury or just kind of want to ease them into training and or whatever. We don't know the exact reason, but it was kind of a little bit of a disappointing when we saw that COVID hit and we realized ACC's still running. We're like, ooh, great. At least we still
Mhm.
get to see the NC State women. Like that was like
Yeah.
a bonus. We're like, cool. That's the one conference that we have some interest in, but the women weren't really. They didn't give us what we wanted by showing a full strength squad uh, and showing what they can be potentially when they go up against Stanford and New Mexico in March. So that was my loser in the hype.
I think if we did this as grades instead of doing it simply as winner loser, I think you'd give NC State incomplete at this point. I mean, they
Yeah.
did great, but by their own standards, just because we haven't seen two people we think are going to be in their top five. I would say you brought up those two teams that haven't run. Are they winners by default, Stanford and New Mexico? Just because NC State is probably a little more vulnerable than we expected heading into the season. It's hard because we don't have any data, but we know, and we know Stanford is going to be strong up front because we've seen Donahue and Lawson before, and obviously Kaladi leading New Mexico, and then you were really big on some of New Mexico's new pieces as well too. Has the gap shrunk between NC State and everybody else, even though everybody else haven't even run?
Well, not necessarily. I think NC State's Dominic Claremont, the woman who won ACCs, I think in a lot of form charts or whatever, I had her probably as like their number 4 runner. And
Okay,
if their number 4 runner is winning ACCs, that's probably a good sign, right? Um,
sure.
but so I think they showed that they have like a really strong 4 now, and they just need to find that 5th. I mean, their strong 4 would be Tui, Claremont, Steelman, and Camille.
Starlipper. Oh, Camille.
And I mean Camille, but Starlipper, I guess, would be the potential 5th, right? So,
Yeah, yeah,
or
yeah.
whoever else shows up and has a good day. But yeah, incomplete. Has anyone ever gotten an incomplete on a report card? Like
Yeah, you give them out halfway
you've
sometimes.
given out an incomplete? What's the
As a former teacher, yes, sometimes we were required to, based on certain circumstances.
what's the
So,
definition of an incomplete? You just like what would a kid need to do for you to give him an incomplete? Aren't
well,
you
sometimes
failing? Like
if they had like a medical excuse and were out for a long period of time or some other reason, so it's like, hey, we can't hold this stuff against. Like if it was the end of the semester, we'd have to decide a grade. But since it's midway through and we don't have enough work to evaluate your grade, you're just going to get an incomplete. That's usually the way we handled it
Uh,
for special circumstances. But you bring up an interesting point here, though. I mean, this is like a good lesson of just like what the perils are of like relying on a bunch of freshmen, right? I mean, it could
yeah,
work and they could be awesome in March, but we could also have a situation where a couple of those key freshmen just get held out for precautionary reasons because a lot of times freshmen redshirt and then their team drastically changes. We
yeah.
need to consider that possibility. All right. Who's up next? What do you got?
It's your turn. Give me a winner or a loser. You keep on bringing in the
Wesley.
winners, and I'll bring the losers.
I'll talk Wesley Kiptoo here. Actually, I mean, winner I think is you. You brought to light Arkansas men, Wesley Kiptoo, and of course, Mercy Chelangat. So I think you have been right on a couple of these, which I make fun of you when you're wrong. So I should at least give you credit when you're right. Yeah. So Wesley Kiptoo just completely dominates the Big 12s and has looked good all season for Iowa State. People you talked to said he was better than Edwin Kurgat. I thought that was crazy. It may not end up being that crazy. He's run really well in the JUCO ranks, but that's a totally different ballgame once you get up to the D1 status. And I don't know, man, winning Big 12s in that fashion is not a fluke. So I think he has helped himself tremendously just with a couple meets. And again, I'm trying to look at the people who are like stand up position to gain from these weird circumstances. And I think someone like him would be perfect because he gets to dip his toe in the water of this level of competition, but then now has time to make any changes, make any adjustments, and can make sure he's really good come March. But you have him, what, sixth in the rankings? Well, you had him sixth going into last weekend. I'm assuming he's going to move way up. I would probably put him, I mean, Mance, Grijalva, Bangura, I would say. Like, you got to give Mance based on what he's done and the fact that 10K he's going to be pretty good. Grijalva based on what he did indoors.
Kiptoo. He changed his name to Kiptoo.
Oh, sorry. It says Bangura on here. Sorry.
Yeah, that's because preseason wise, that was his name. He changed his last name.
Okay. My apologies. So those three. Let me just talk about those three and what each of them brings. Grijalva, you have to have him in there because of what he did indoors, which is the last data point before everything got canceled, and then what he did in Stillwater was mighty impressive. Mance, top returner. He was pretty strong indoors as well, too. Ran that 10K and then was second behind ran that 10K in LA, and then it was second behind Grijalva, and he's going to be good when it counts. He's just done it over and over again. And then Kiptoo, the new guy on the scene who has just been blown it out of the water, has to be included in there. So all three of those guys are in the top of the list, and I think they're all there for a different reason, and you can make a strong argument for all three of them.
Yeah. I mean, Kiptoo is like, I mean, his junior college, he ran 751 and 1343. I mean, how many people are running 751? Not many people, especially 751 in the non-NCAA scene. It makes sense that he's this good.
He's running like a 1320 guy now, though, right? He's running like a 1320 guy now. He's not running like a 13.
Yeah.
What did you say, 1340?
Well, yeah. Last year he ran 1343 in an indoor season, right? So
right,
he just
yeah.
He did it at a random like Region 6 indoor championship for JUCO. It's like crazy. Mm-hmm. He's just been an animal. How good? So I'm not really good with 8K times, but I mean at conferences he beat Isai by like 15 seconds or 14 seconds, but he beat third place by almost a minute. So clearly, like, he was like so far ahead of the rest of the regular folk of runners, the 3 through 10 runners in the Big 12. And apparently he goes out, he runs until he breaks you, and then once he's broken you, he just holds it. Like, he's not like his strategy is just go until I'm by myself, and once I'm by myself, I cruise in. I did talk to Dave Smith about. Yeah, I did talk to Dave Smith about the Big 12 race specifically, and Isai went with Kiptu as long as he could, and then eventually coach told Isai, like, hey, lay off, because if you try to go with them for too long, you could bonk and then finish like 10th. You getting second is more valuable than you potentially getting the win, for points
Yeah.
wise. So they legitimately they were just like, they waved the white flag against him after like a mile, and they're like, hey, we're out. You can have the win. Isai, just get the second place finish, get that low stick, and then we'll go from there. Which is kind of wild.
I mean, he's running.
So
Isn't this sort of how Lawi Lalang did it and Kennedy
yeah,
Kathuka did it, of just straight out from the gun? It's a little different than the Morgan McDonald, Edwin Kurgat style of dominance. They seem to approach
yeah.
cross country more like a track race where they wind it up at the end. But there's this breed out there of runners who just completely, sort of like Kaladi in a way too. Just, hey, I'm better than you. I know I'm better than you. And we can either do this two ways. You can either leave me alone from the beginning, or I'm going to run your legs off.
You know
And
what I just thought
that's
about?
an impressive show of confidence.
Dude, you know what I just thought about? Iowa
What?
State outdoor title? Because remember, guess who's coming back? Edwin Kurgat, right? He'll come back because he didn't get outdoor last year. Kurgat and
Oh,
Kiptu,
wow.
could they go 1-2, 1-2 in the 5 and 10 and score 36 points?
Yeah.
That could
And then
happen.
Festus Legat
And then
gets 10 in
Festus
the
Legat
800
wins does well in the 8. They
and the
probably have some
15.
throw or something. Or in the
So
15, yeah.
that's 30, 46, 50, that's 56 points once Festus doubles in the 8
No,
and the
Festus isn't
15.
going to. I'm being more realistic. It is realistic to think
I
that
am too.
Edwin Kurgat and Wesley Kiptu could go 1-2, 1-2. That is a realistic
Hey,
thing. It probably won't
don't
happen,
tell
but
me
like, there's no Joe Klecker. I mean, it, it could. Hey,
I
that'll be
didn't know he was
exciting to see
coming back.
them race each other. Because
Are
if
you sure he's
Kiptu
coming back?
does go out, Kurgat,
Yeah.
yeah, why not?
I mean, I would
I'll
think,
check.
but I don't know. That would be. I didn't even think about him and the fact that they're training together. That must be quite helpful if he's training
Yeah.
with Edwin Kurgat. It's like, hey,
So the
here's how to win an NCAA championship. Just follow exactly what I
so
do.
they only have the 2020 roster up, so we don't know what the 2021 is. But I think he is coming back. But yeah, that'll be cool if Kiptu goes on to win cross country, then we have the two
Mhm.
cross country champions from the same school, and then we get to see them finally race each other for the first time, which would be kind of pretty wild. So
That'd be cool. That'd be cool. I don't. Does it make it better that they're from the same school or worse?
better,
The two best people, like the Jenkins and Cheserek thing. You were a big fan of
yeah,
that?
yeah. I was a big fan. I don't know, big fan. I wasn't like I didn't have like my face painted,
Yeah,
but
but you
I
enjoyed
was a
watching
fan.
those two, even though they're on the same team. I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm telling you, man. I'm already bring up the form charts. Iowa State is going to be that's going to be my equivalent of the NAU indoor team. I'm going for the Iowa State outdoor team when they have Kiptu and Kurgat. It's going to be great.
Winner.
I'm already
Iowa
excited
State's
now. This is
outdoor
awesome.
team.
Big winner. Iowa State's outdoor team. Yes, for
Do they have
sure.
anybody else?
I
They
mean,
they had some other 800 guys that would get eligibility back, right?
they had a couple.
Okay. They had some mid
Let's see what
distance
their top
folks.
performances were.
You got anybody in the field?
So they had
They got anybody who can run 10 too?
they had 3 guys, I think they had 2 guys who ran 147 indoors and a third guy who ran 148 indoors. So they might have a thrower somewhere.
Well, it's too bad Kurgat doesn't get indoors back, because if he got
Oh,
indoors back combined with Iowa State's mid distance, maybe they get a DMR out there.
then we're
And they
talking.
become Gordon's favorite team there. Okay, so he's my winner, Wesley Kiptu. I didn't even think about the outdoor implications. Man, you got me beat. You're talking 2022 Oklahoma State and 2021 outdoor Iowa State. I live in the here and now, so it's cool to be around somebody who's so future focused.
Like they said, you got to have the longest view in the room. famous Sam Hinkie quote. Speaking of Sam Hinkie,
Did he say that?
what I haven't got to talk to you publicly on this podcast. What are your thoughts on Daryl Morey joining the Sixers? For those
I
who don't
just
know
love
Daryl
that you.
Morey, he's a former Houston Rockets GM who's considered one of the better GMs in the league. Sixers front office is a dumpster fire, but now we bring in the best guy to solve all the problems, and that means we're just going to win the next 10 championships, according to science. What are your thoughts on Daryl Morey going to the Sixers?
I like how you and Lincoln opened with it last week. You didn't even pretend that you were a running podcast, and you did. I think you did like 7 or 8 minutes on it before you guys caught yourself. Like, oh, we got to talk about something else. It's the perfect marriage. This was inevitable. You have the 76ers, which is the most clickable NBA team, to put it in internet parlance. Now with the the general manager that people love speculating and talking about because he's so media friendly. So it's just going to be ridiculous. It's just for people who just despise 76er coverage because it's so dramatic and breathless. It's going to be just a rough run for me. I didn't think it could get more self-indulgent, but I'm going to have to, even if I didn't work with you, everything I hear about the NBA is going to be told through this ridiculous Sixers prism. Elton Brand's still there though, right?
Yeah, he got his contract extension. Apparently, it was Elton Brand's idea to bring in Morey.
So is the front office still a mess then? I don't know what's going on here.
No, he's just going to he's going to be his little his little bitch. That's what they say. Basically, Morey's can make all the decisions, and I think Brand will be the face of the decisions. Brand will be like, hey, he'll woo the free agents and be like that because I'm a former player. Hey, we got that connection. But I think in the end, Brand is going to be like, all right, Morey's going to come here. We're going to have a lot of success, and then I'm going to add all the success to my resume, and then I'll go get a job somewhere else as being the head honcho of basketball operations. I think he realized, like, hey, I got thrown into this craziness. I got this job off of no resume, but maybe I need to, like, get a couple wins here with Morey as my boss, and then I could be considered a prime candidate for, like, the future opening at some other big school. Like, I could see, I guess Atlanta and Clippers are his former teams. So maybe go to maybe Clippers. Maybe eventually he shows success here for the Sixers, and all of a sudden Brand is like the big sexy hire for a new franchise out there. So that's what I think he's thinking. He's thinking, hey, this will make me look good when I'm a free agent in 2028.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense with Morey. A lot of hype. Results aren't that great, so it fits pretty well with the 76ers and what they've done the last few years. So be excited to see it. Good luck to you and that's your team.
See, what we're going to do is we're going to pretend NBA talk is our ad block. You know how all podcasts have, like, you got to do like a 30 to 60-second ad? Our ad is just our love for basketball. So
what if we got sponsored by the NBA?
That'd be great. What if we just give our NBA minute?
Yeah, Adam Silver was like, "Hey, I want to really take Track's audience share. It's been cutting into ours at the NBA. Can you guys just? I'm gonna throw a bunch of money to Track people. Okay, do you have any more? We have time for a few more. You can do winners. Yeah, you don't have to just be negative.
I mean, winner.
NAU.
No.
BYU.
No.
Connor Mance's shirt that he used for a mask? No?
No, I mean, yeah, NAU and BYU kind of just are a wash to me. I feel like I look at them the same even if they didn't run that race. There was nothing that they did in that race that really impressed me. If anything, I mean, people may not want to hear this, but like NAU's result wasn't that good when you put it in comparison. They didn't have that tight of a pack. Yes, Grijalva was great, and Abdi Hamid was good. But after that, the rest of the guys were below their standard of average, right? So like Drew Bosley wasn't like running up there in the top 10. Like if this team was on fire and like training, they should have put their entire top 5 in the top 10, but they didn't. They only put 2 guys in the top 10. So
yeah.
I mean, you had Nico Young and it becomes different. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm not as panicked about NAU as you are. I've long been a believer, even when you did not think. Yeah, when I asked you, I said, "Why do you want to do this Running with the Boys documentary?" You're like, "I want to be there to see the tears." I was like, "Whoa, that's pretty crazy. I think that they can win." And the whole year
It's a
you're like,
long
no,
time.
it's only better if they lose. There's going to be just mass chaos on the team. The whole program might go under. I said, I don't know about that, Gordon. Yeah, I'm not worried about NAU. I think they did fine in that race. I think they'll be fine.
Yeah.
Like they're missing 3 people who could be All-Americans on that
Yeah.
team. So it's too, I wouldn't give them an incomplete because they've turned in work, but I would say they're a B, but you're like, all right, you just didn't turn in your homework. All your quiz scores are good. Just turn in your homework and you'll be fine. And you can say the same about BYU too.
We probably should save this. I think we should bring on a guest. I think we should
Mm.
bring on a guest, Corey Mull, to our podcast sometime this week and have him talk about NCAA recruiting. Because we haven't been on that beat, right? With Miles
Okay.
Split's been uncovering who's signing where during this crazy season.
Are you asking for a crossover? Are you asking for a
looking for a
crossover
crossover pod.
episode?
Yes, but
Are you trying to
we'll
get
talk
on the
about this,
line?
but-
Are you going to go on their show? Are you going to go on the
But
line?
apparently,
Are you going to step into the lion's den with Brian
Yes.
and Corey?
yes, but apparently the second best cross country runner in the nation is going to NAU next year. He's
Oh,
from Alaska.
Alaska.
Tristan
Yeah.
Merchant.
Yeah. Okay.
And like, it's just like they're like, I don't know. It's kind of crazy to think about. Like, they have all this success, all these freshmen now now these redshirt sophomores, and then they just keep on adding more. It seems like NAU needs 2 teams. They have too many great runners. It's like unfair to have that much depth, you know. So
Yeah.
anyway, I was just thinking about that. Like, of course they're getting, because you feel like they should go like 1 year without a good recruit, but now they're just gonna go. They're gonna get Brody Hasty 1 year, then they get Drew Bosley the next year, then they get Nico Young last year, and then this year they're getting kid from Alaska, Tristan Merchant, who likely if had a junior outdoor season would be looked at the same way we look at a Drew Bosley. So this is kind of wild.
Yeah. So here's something that I don't know, maybe the Mile Split folks know. Maybe they don't. I don't know. Maybe it's more of a data thing for you. But it's like, if you were moneyballing this, right? If you were working just hypothetically for a Division I team, let's say NAU, just throwing that out there. No, like what's your hit rate got to be on the
I
like
was
when
actually
you
thinking
recruit?
about this the other day. Yeah.
So because if you get one to land every recruiting class that can be an All-American, and then you're able to add in a grad transfer here or a JUCO transfer there, that's all you need. Isn't that, like, if you're starting with like, if we can get a top 5 Foot Locker / NXN person every year, at least one, and you hit on, how many do you need to hit on, I guess? How many need to happen in a row before you become a title team? Does that make sense? What I'm
Yeah, I
asking?
mean, you have to bring in 4, and I think you have to hit 1 every 4. Now that hit needs to be like a legit hit. The hit can't be like, oh, I'm a 14, 15 guy. Like the hit needs to be
Right.
like, I can run sub 14. So yeah, I think every year you probably bring in 4 guys or women and are like, hey, hope 25% of them are studs.
Yeah.
But
And
then you have
that's
to
the
think
reason.
about, well, you also think about the recruiting aspect of like, I thought about this, like, what is a better, like, what's a smarter move? Is it smart to try to get the stars, like get at least 1 star, or is it smart to try to find the under-raced, middle of nowhere kid who you're like, hey, he's won everything in his county, everything in his state, in Nebraska, but no one knows about him because he's not being pushed, right? And he's not traveling to Arcadia to run in the fast race. Like, are you always trying to find like these hidden gems that no one's talking about? Like, oh, it's because he was like playing soccer. He never ran cross country type guy,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. Well, it's got to be a combination because of the money and the scholarship allotment, but it also makes sense from a perspective. It's like, okay, I can bring in this guy who ran 850 for 2 miles, or I can bring in, 2 people who run 905. You can see why someone would say, well, I'll bring in the 850 because I don't, even if it doesn't work, like that's okay because most people aren't going to work, but at least we're starting with a higher upside of somebody who could
But
work. I understand.
I don't know. would you rather bring in one 850 guy or three 910 guys?
I probably if you're NAU and you already have the pieces moving,
Yeah, if NAU,
like
you get the 850. Yeah.
yeah, because the only thing that moves NAU is you get a Nico Young. If you get the next tier down, it doesn't matter because then you're in this huge group of people who would be their 8th through 20th guy. And
Yeah,
there's no
yeah.
need to recruit the 8. Like they're looking for the number 4 man, the number 3 man, who can eventually turn into the top person. But I just think also when you want to leave space too for people that you can bring. Like look at what NC State is doing, or look at what Arkansas men is doing with grad transfers or regular transfers. You want to leave space in there for that because that person's already been established at this level. So you're just like, oh, I'm not bringing in an 850 person that I need to develop it one or two steps down the road to get even better. It's like, oh no, I'm bringing in an All-American from last year. If they just do exactly what they did last year, then we can plug them in and they'll be fine. But I wonder how many, like you talk to coaches, how much are they thinking about stuff like that in terms of allocation of scholarships? Because you never like hear or read anything about it. Like how do they
Yeah,
come
I
up with
mean,
that?
I'm sure there's different strategies, right? And I'm sure there's teams that are really good at working the margins and finding turning the not being. I mean, it's just two different programs, right? There's programs where they are going to be able to attract the 405 guys and like basically the top 10 people in the nation, and those teams are going
Yeah.
to be UW, Milt at North Carolina, NAU, Stanford. Like
Yeah.
there's like
Yeah.
there's like
Notre Dame.
probably Notre Dame 15 programs that they can have one of these stars walk into their room and be able to convince them. But then there's programs that can't do that, right? Who aren't that stalwart of a program
Yeah.
that need to try to work the margins and get a bunch of guys that nobody wanted and do that for multiple years. And then eventually you become good enough that then the people are going to start wanting you, right? I mean,
Yeah. Yeah. You
yeah.
got to
So
find the
that's going to be
inefficiency.
the,
You got to,
yeah.
well, that's so like, I guess you'd have to go way back in time then because the NAU before Mike Smith, it was Eric Hines. And then before that was like, they've had good programs there for decades. And the fact that it's in Flagstaff helps. But I just always wonder, how did that start? How did they get the fire going? And what sort of inefficiencies did they capitalize in the beginning? Because you're right. If it was all just about reputation and recruits, then Oregon and Stanford would have been winning every year for the last 20 years because those are the name brand programs. But it's like they must have done, all these smaller teams must have done something in the beginning, and they must have been able to see something in their recruiting that other programs weren't seeing to get some of these kids.
Yeah. And I mean, not to talk about NAU again, but I will
No,
like
it's been a
low
while.
key NAU, like everyone was talking about Nico Young in the last year's recruiting class. But I think based off of what we've seen so far, their
Yeah.
best signing might not be Nico Young. Again, Nico Young's the best signing. He's the one who's going to be like in their top 5 right away, and he's going to be, game changing. But this kid, Santiago Prosser from Anchorage,
Yeah.
Alaska. So
Yeah.
his resume has like nothing on it, right? His best times are 418 in the
Yeah.
1600, 924 in the 3200. So
That's like a Tyler
nothing.
Day. That's like a Tyler Day type resume from high school,
Yeah.
right?
All right.
Yeah.
Cross country. Last time he raced cross country in 2019, he won every race in cross country. No, wait, he didn't. He lost some 3Ks, but that doesn't count. We won't count that. But he ran 4 5Ks, and he won every one of them, ending with the Alaska State Championship, which he won. He won the Alaska State Championship. He didn't go to NXN, didn't go to Foot Locker. So this guy's like, hey, he's a raw person. And then you look at he was their 7th man
Yeah.
at Oklahoma State. Like he
Yeah.
was right up there with Drew Bosley and Brody Hasty. It's just like, who is this kid? They already have this kid who's
Right.
now in their top 7. I mean, sure, their top 7
Yeah.
won't be their same top 7, but like stuff like that, you're like, once again, another one just comes in and boom, right away.
Yeah. Well, because we are paying more attention to the Nico Youngs and the Drew Bosleys because
Yeah.
there's there's so many people, and every state has, in some cases, bigger states have multiple kids like the one you're describing that are going to schools all around. You just never know who's going to pan out and who's not. But I'm it's yeah, like when I've talked to Corey and Brian before about this person or that person, it's like you look at their times. It's like even on the sprint side of things, right? Oh, so and so's going to Kentucky or Florida. It's like, all right, well, that's like a really good high school time, but to score in the SEC meet, even or to get to NCAA's, they're going to have to drop a bunch of time, and a lot of kids don't, and that's where it ends. Um,
Yeah.
for them. So you see the appeal in like, oh, I'm gonna sign. Obviously, this is no brainer. I'm gonna sign Sydney McLaughlin. Why? Well, because she's 10 points right now. That's like 10
Yeah.
points in the bank right now. Or we're gonna get Nico Young. Why? Because he's a top 15 guy in the nation right now. But there's this whole other group of Santiago Procers or Tyler Days or whoever who are really good high school runners, but they can go in two directions. That could have been it for them in high school, or they can go the direction of becoming a superstar. So
Yeah.
yeah,
And
I'm
I
I'm
think
I'm
I
curious
would
about
love to
this one.
talk to them because how the hell is the recruiting happening right now, right? These kids had no 2020 season. A lot of them now aren't having a 2020 cross country season. Like
Yeah, yeah,
you're basing their resumes are like, especially on the men's side, a lot of women run faster younger, but a lot of men don't really have their breakout race until their junior year outdoor. And
sure.
this year's class didn't have that. So
Mhm.
what are we to know if you're actually good or not? Like, so I think that's going to be we're going to know who's really good at recruiting when we see who from this class. We're going to know who's really good at recruiting in like at the 2022 cross country championships when we see these high
Yeah,
school kids running. So
yeah, yeah. And then by the time you get there, there's like transfers and international
yeah,
runners all thrown in there as well too. It's really hard to sort out. All right, we'll leave it there. FloTrackPodcast@gmail.com. Lincoln and I will be on tomorrow. He's back from his, I don't even know what he was doing. Apparently he's in another city. And then Lincoln and Gordon will be up on Wednesday. Any last words, Gordon, before we go?
no last words.
Okay.
Yeah, check
You're
out
going
the
to try to
Halloween
find
costume.
Corey
I was really proud of my Halloween costume. Go check it out. It's all on all my Instagrams, Twitters. It's great.
and leave Gordon a comment on one of those about the 76ers. And then you'll
Yes.
you'll make him happy. Unless it's
Yes.
negative. And then keep it to yourself. All right. Thanks, Solon, for producing. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow.